Captain Markuschan had seen many things in his 15 years exploring the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for the sight before him. The massive crystalline throne room stretched endlessly upward, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that cast an eerie blue glow across the chamber. At its center sat the most terrifying and magnificent creature he had ever encountered. Queen Zephyra was enormous, easily 3 times his height even while seated. Her exoskeleton was midnight black with silver markings that traced intricate patterns across her form. Forearms extended from her torso, each ending in razor-sharp claws that could tear through steel. Her head was elongated, with multiple eyes that glowed like amber stars, and mandibles that clicked softly as she observed him. Spines jutted from her back like a crown of thorns, and her lower body resembled that of a massive insect, with legs that could crush a human without effort. Marcus stood alone in the center of the throne room, his diplomatic escort having fled the moment they laid eyes on the queen. The translation device in his ear crackled to life as she spoke, her voice a haunting melody that seemed to come from multiple throats at once. "Human," she said, the word dripping with curiosity and disdain. "You are the first of your species to request an audience with me. My advisors told me you were either very brave or very foolish. Looking at you now, I believe it is the latter." Marcus straightened his shoulders, refusing to show the fear that coursed through his veins. He had come too far to back down now. The future of human expansion into this sector of the galaxy depended on establishing diplomatic relations with the Zarathi Empire, and Queen Zephyra ruled over 36 star systems with an iron claw. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I come bearing greetings from the United Earth Federation. We seek peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation between our peoples." The Queen's mandibles clicked in what he could only assume was amusement. "Peaceful coexistence? Human, do you not see what I am? Do you not comprehend the monster that sits before you? I have conquered civilizations that were ancient when your species was still crawling in mud. I have personally executed thousands who dared to oppose me. My very presence has caused seasoned warriors to soil themselves and beg for mercy." She leaned forward, her massive form casting a shadow over him. The spines on her back rattled like wind chimes made of bone. "I am death incarnate, a nightmare given flesh. My people call me the devourer of hope, the breaker of worlds. Yet you stand there as if you were having tea with a friend. Tell me, foolish human, what madness possesses you?" Marcus looked up at her, taking in every detail of her fearsome appearance. He could see the scars that crisscrossed her exoskeleton, each one telling the story of a battle won. He could smell the pheromones she released, designed to trigger primal fear in any creature that encountered her. He could feel the weight of her presence, the sheer alien power that radiated from her being. And then, he smiled. It was not a forced smile or a diplomatic gesture. It was genuine, warm, and completely unexpected. The Queen's multiple eyes widened in shock, and her mandibles stopped their clicking. "Your Majesty," Marcus said softly, "with all due respect, I think you're beautiful." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the bioluminescent veins in the walls seemed to pulse more slowly, as if the entire chamber was holding its breath. Queen Zephyra's forearms trembled slightly, and, for the first time in centuries, she was at a loss for words. "Beautiful," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the translator. "Human, are you mocking me? Do you think to insult me with such obvious lies?" Marcus shook his head, his smile never wavering. "I'm not lying, Your Majesty. I think you're absolutely magnificent." The Queen's eyes blazed with sudden fury. She rose from her throne, her massive form towering over the human like a living mountain of chitin and rage. Her claws extended to their full length, each one gleaming like polished obsidian. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as her anger filled the space. "Magnificent," she snarled, her voice now a terrifying roar that echoed off the crystalline walls. "Look at me, human. Look at what I am. I am a monster. I am everything your species has nightmares about. My face has launched 1,000 wars, my presence has ended countless lives. How dare you stand there and call me beautiful?" But Marcus did not flinch. He did not run. Instead, he took a step closer to the enraged queen, his eyes meeting hers without fear. I see exactly what you are, he said calmly. I see a being of incredible strength and intelligence. I see the way your exoskeleton catches the light, how those silver markings create patterns that would make our greatest artists weep with envy. I see the grace in your movements, despite your size. I see the fire in your eyes, the passion behind your anger. I see a queen who has carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders for longer than my entire species has existed. Queen Zephyra took a step back, her rage faltering in the face of his unexpected words. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked past the monster to see anything else. You speak madness, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. I am hideous. I am the stuff of nightmares. How can you possibly find beauty in something like me? Marcus clasped his hands behind his back, maintaining eye contact with the towering alien queen. Your Majesty, may I ask you a question? The queen's mandibles clicked uncertainly. Speak. When you look at the stars, what do you see? The question caught her completely off guard. Of all the things she had expected the human to say, this was not one of them. The stars? I see lights in the darkness. I see the territories I have conquered, the worlds that bow to my will. I see beauty, Marcus said simply. I see distant suns burning with nuclear fire, their light traveling across impossible distances to reach us. I see the birthplace of elements, the forges where the very atoms that make up our bodies were created billions of years ago. I see mystery and wonder and infinite possibility. The queen tilted her head, studying him with new interest. And, your point, human? Beauty isn't about appearance, Your Majesty. It's about perspective, about understanding, about seeing the truth beneath the surface. When I look at you, I don't see a monster. I see a being who has survived for centuries in a universe that rewards only the strongest. I see intelligence that has guided an empire across multiple star systems. I see someone who has made the hard choices that lesser beings couldn't make. Queen Zephyra sank back onto her throne, her massive form seeming somehow smaller. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt uncertain, vulnerable. You truly believe this? Marcus nodded. I do. And I think that deep down, beneath all the armor and the anger and the fear, you know it too. The queen's eyes flashed dangerously. Fear? You think I fear something? I think you fear being seen as anything other than a monster, Marcus said gently. Because if people see you as beautiful, if they see you as something other than a nightmare, then you might have to see yourself differently too. And that's the most terrifying thing of all. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Queen Zephyra stared at this small human who had somehow managed to see through defenses that had taken her centuries to build. Her four hands clenched and unclenched, her mind racing with thoughts and emotions she had long believed herself incapable of feeling. Why, she whispered finally. Why would you say such things to me? What do you hope to gain? Marcus's expression grew serious. Nothing, Your Majesty. I gain nothing from telling you the truth except the satisfaction of knowing that for once, someone saw you for who you really are instead of what they expected you to be. The queen studied him for a long moment, her multiple eyes searching his face for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. She found none. This human, this impossible little creature, was telling her the truth as he saw it. And, somehow, that truth was more terrifying than any weapon ever pointed at her. You are either the bravest being I have ever encountered, she said slowly, or the most foolish. Marcus smiled again, that same warm, genuine expression that had started this entire conversation. Maybe both, Your Majesty. But, I'd rather be a beautiful fool than an ugly coward. For the first time in centuries, Queen Zephyra felt something stir within her that she had thought long dead. It was small and fragile and utterly foreign to her nature. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. Hope. Human, she said, her voice softer than it had been moments before. What is your name? Marcus Chen, Your Majesty. Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Federation. Captain Chen, she repeated, tasting the foreign syllables. You have given me much to think about. Return to your ship. I will consider your words and your unique perspective. Marcus bowed deeply. "Thank you for the audience, Your Majesty. I am honored to have met you." As he turned to leave, the Queen called out to him. "Captain Chen?" "Yes, Your Majesty?" "When you return to your people, what will you tell them about me?" Marcus paused at the threshold of the great chamber, looking back at the magnificent, terrible, beautiful queen who sat alone on her crystalline throne. "I'll tell them the truth," he said. "That I met the most remarkable being in the galaxy, and that she was absolutely beautiful." And then, he was gone, leaving Queen Zephyra alone with her thoughts and a single, impossible word echoing in the vast chamber: beautiful. 3 days had passed since Captain Chen's departure, and Queen Zephyra had not left her private chambers. Her advisors waited anxiously outside the sealed doors, uncertain whether to be concerned for their queen's well-being or terrified of what might happen when she finally emerged. None of them had ever seen her retreat from anything, let alone a simple conversation with a human diplomat. Inside the chamber, Zephyra stood before a massive mirror made of polished obsidian, its surface reflecting her image with perfect clarity. She had avoided looking at herself for decades, having long ago grown tired of seeing the monster that stared back. But, now, with the human's words still echoing in her mind, she found herself studying her reflection with new eyes. "Beautiful," she whispered to herself, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. "He called me beautiful." Her 4 hands traced the silver markings on her exoskeleton, patterns that she had always considered mere evolutionary accidents. The markings formed intricate spirals and geometric shapes that covered her entire body, each one unique and complex. For the first time in centuries, she noticed how they caught and reflected light, creating an almost hypnotic display of luminescence. The chamber around her was a testament to her loneliness. Where other rulers might surround themselves with courtiers and advisors, Zephyra had built herself a sanctuary of solitude. The walls were lined with trophies from her conquests, weapons taken from defeated enemies, and holographic displays showing the vast extent of her empire. But there were no personal touches, no mementos of friendship or love. Nothing that spoke to the being behind the crown. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Zephyra considered ignoring it, as she had all the others over the past 3 days, but something made her hesitate. She activated the communication array, and the image of her chief advisor, Commander Vex, appeared in the air before her. Vex was a Zarathi like herself, though smaller and less imposing. His exoskeleton was a deep green color marked with bronze patterns, and his manner was always respectful but confident. He had served her for over 50 years and was one of the few beings in the galaxy who could speak to her with anything approaching honesty. "My queen," Vex said, his mandibles clicking in the pattern that indicated concern. "The council is growing restless. There are decisions that require your attention, territories that need governing. We cannot maintain the empire's stability if you continue to isolate yourself." Zephyra turned away from the mirror, her massive form moving with surprising grace. "The empire has survived for 1,000 years, Vex. It can survive a few more days without my direct involvement." "My queen, if I may ask, what transpired during your meeting with the human diplomat? You have been different since his departure." "Different." The word hung in the air between them like an accusation. Zephyra considered her response carefully. How could she explain that a single conversation had shattered her understanding of herself? How could she tell her most trusted advisor that she was questioning everything she had believed about her nature? "He said something unexpected," she said finally. "Something that has given me cause for reflection." Vex's multiple eyes flickered with curiosity, but he knew better than to press for details when the queen was in such a mood. "The other members of the council are asking about our response to the human delegation. Shall I tell them we are considering their proposal for an alliance?" "An alliance," Zephyra repeated thoughtfully. The idea had seemed absurd when Captain Chen first proposed it. The humans were a young species, barely emerged from their home system and possessing technology that was primitive compared to the Zarathi. What could they possibly offer an empire that spanned multiple sectors of the galaxy? But now, as she considered the captain's words, she began to see possibilities she had not recognized before. The humans possessed something that her empire had lost somewhere along the way: the ability to see beauty in unexpected places, to find hope in the darkest circumstances, to believe in the possibility of change. Vex, she said slowly, in all your years of service, have you ever considered me beautiful? The question clearly caught her advisor off guard. His mandibles clicked rapidly in the pattern that indicated extreme confusion. My queen, that is to say, you are magnificent, terrible, awe-inspiring. But, not beautiful. Beauty is not a quality I would associate with conquest and dominion, my queen. You are powerful beyond measure, intelligent beyond comprehension, feared throughout the galaxy. These are far more valuable traits than mere beauty. Zephyra nodded, unsurprised by his response. It was the same answer she would have given herself just days ago. Beauty was weakness, a luxury that had no place in the harsh realities of galactic politics. A queen who was beautiful might be loved, but she would not be feared. And, without fear, there could be no order, no peace, no empire. But, Captain Shen had challenged that assumption with nothing more than a smile and a few honest words. He had looked at her, truly looked at her, and seen something worth appreciating. Not her power or her conquests or her terrible reputation, but her. Vex, I want you to arrange something for me. Of course, my queen. What do you require? I want to meet with the human again. Not in the throne room, not as a formal diplomatic audience. Arrange for him to visit the observation deck in the palace's highest tower. Tonight, when the twin moons are at their zenith. Vex's confusion was evident in every click of his mandibles. My queen, if you wish to continue negotiations, surely the formal diplomatic suite would be more appropriate? This is not about negotiations, Vex. This is about understanding. After her advisor had departed to make the arrangements, Zephyra found herself once again standing before the obsidian mirror. But, this time, instead of seeing only the monster she had become, she tried to see what the human had seen. It was difficult at first, like trying to learn a new language or solve a complex mathematical equation. But, gradually, slowly, she began to perceive herself differently. The spines on her back were not weapons of intimidation but a crown worthy of any monarch in the galaxy. Her claws were not instruments of death but precision tools capable of delicate manipulation and artistic creation. Her size was not meant to inspire terror but to provide protection and strength to those who needed it. For the first time in decades, Queen Zephyra allowed herself to wonder what might have been if she had chosen a different path. What if, instead of ruling through fear, she had tried to inspire loyalty through respect? What if, instead of viewing herself as a monster, she had embraced the possibility of being something more? The questions were painful because they implied that she had wasted centuries of her existence pursuing the wrong goals. But they were also exhilarating because they suggested that change was still possible, that it was never too late to become something better. As evening approached, Zephyra made her way to the observation deck. The journey through the palace's corridors was a familiar one, but tonight it felt different. She noticed details she had never paid attention to before, the way the bioluminescent plants created patterns of light and shadow on the walls, the gentle hum of the life support systems that kept the palace habitable, the distant sounds of her subjects going about their daily lives in the city below. The observation deck was a circular room with transparent walls that offered a 360-degree view of the palace's surroundings. The twin moons hung low in the sky, their combined light casting everything in a silver glow. The city sprawled out below, its lights twinkling like terrestrial stars. Captain Shen was already waiting when she arrived, his small human form silhouetted against the cosmic panorama beyond. He turned as she entered, and, once again she saw that warm, genuine smile that had started this entire crisis of self-reflection. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing respectfully. "Thank you for agreeing to see me again." "Captain Shen," she replied, her voice softer than it had been during their first meeting. "I must ask you something, and I require your complete honesty." "Of course, Your Majesty." "When you called me beautiful, were you simply trying to flatter me for diplomatic purposes?" Marcus considered the question carefully, understanding that his answer would determine the course of their relationship and, possibly the future of both their peoples. "No, Your Majesty. I meant every word. In fact, seeing you here, bathed in moonlight with the stars behind you, I think you're even more beautiful than before." Zephyra felt something tighten in her chest, an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "But, I am still the same creature who has conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations. I am still the monster who strikes fear into the hearts of entire species. Yes, Marcus agreed. You are all of those things. But, you're also something more. You're a being capable of questioning herself, of feeling doubt and uncertainty and hope. You're someone who cares enough about truth to seek it out, even when it's painful. That makes you not just beautiful, but extraordinary. The queen moved closer to the transparent wall, her multiple eyes reflecting the starlight. Do you know what the greatest tragedy of my existence has been, Captain? No, Your Majesty. I have been alone for over 800 years. Not physically alone, you understand. I have been surrounded by advisors and subjects and supplicants. But I have never had anyone look at me and see anything other than what they expected to see. Until now. Marcus joined her at the wall, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Loneliness is the curse of leadership. But it doesn't have to be permanent. Doesn't it? I have built my entire empire on fear and intimidation. I have cultivated an image of myself as an unstoppable force of nature. If I were to suddenly appear vulnerable or uncertain, everything I have worked for could collapse. Or, Marcus suggested gently, it could become something even stronger. Fear is a powerful motivator, but it's also temporary. Eventually, people find ways to overcome their fears, to rebel against what terrifies them. But respect, admiration, loyalty based on genuine connection, those things last forever. Zephyra was quiet for a long moment, watching the moon slowly track across the sky. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. You don't have to change everything at once, Marcus said. Change is a process, not an event. Start small. Find one person you can trust with your uncertainty, one situation where you can choose compassion over force. Build from there. And, if I fail? If my empire crumbles because I allowed myself to be seen as weak? Marcus smiled. Then, you rebuild it on a foundation of strength that comes from within, not from the fear you inspire in others. True power doesn't come from making others afraid of you, Your Majesty. It comes from making them want to follow you. The queen turned to face him fully, her massive form towering over his small human frame. But, for the first time, her size didn't feel intimidating. It felt protective, like a guardian watching over something precious. You truly believe that I could be something other than a monster? I believe you already are something other than a monster, Marcus replied. You just haven't allowed yourself to see it yet. As the twin moons reached their zenith, Queen Zephyra made a decision that would change the course of history. It was a small decision, barely noticeable to anyone except the two beings standing on the observation deck. But, like all moments of true transformation, it began with a single step. Captain Chen, she said, I would like to hear more about this alliance your people have proposed. But, not as a negotiation between empires. As a conversation between friends. And, for the second time in 3 days, Marcus smiled. 6 months had passed since the first meeting between Queen Zephyra and Captain Marcus Chen, and the changes that followed were nothing short of revolutionary. What had begun as a simple diplomatic mission had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history, a genuine friendship between two beings from completely different worlds. The transformation had not been easy. For centuries, Zephyra had ruled through fear and intimidation, crushing any sign of rebellion with overwhelming force. Her subjects had learned to bow in terror when she passed, to speak in whispers about her legendary cruelty, to view her as more force of nature than living being. Changing that perception required more than just new policies, it required a fundamental shift in how she saw herself. Marcus had become a regular visitor to the Zarathi homeworld, officially serving as the human ambassador but, in practice functioning as something far more valuable, a friend who could see past the monster to the being underneath. Their conversations had become legendary among both species, though for very different reasons. The humans saw them as proof that even the most terrifying alien could be reached through understanding and compassion. The Zarathi saw them as evidence that their queen was either going soft or playing some incomprehensibly complex game. Neither interpretation was entirely accurate, but both contained elements of truth. Today's meeting was different from all the others. Instead of the throne room or the observation deck, Zephyra had invited Marcus to join her in the palace gardens. It was the first time in over 2 centuries that she had visited this part of her domain, a sprawling complex of alien flora that had been maintained by automated systems in her absence. Marcus found her standing beside a pool filled with luminescent water lilies, their petals glowing with soft blue light. She was not wearing her ceremonial armor or the crown of spines that marked her royal status. Instead, she appeared as she truly was, a magnificent alien being whose natural beauty had been hidden for too long beneath layers of artificial intimidation. "They're beautiful," Marcus said as he approached, gesturing toward the floating flowers. "I've never seen anything like them. They were planted by my predecessor, Queen Nyxera, over 1,000 years ago," Zephyra replied. She believed that a ruler should be surrounded by beauty, not just instruments of war. "I always thought she was weak for such sentimentality. And, now?" Zephyra reached down with one of her 4 hands, gently touching the surface of the water. The lilies responded to her presence, their glow intensifying and creating ripples of light across the pool. "Now I think she understood something that I spent 8 centuries trying to forget." Marcus sat on a stone bench beside the pool, careful not to disturb the delicate ecosystem around them. Over the months of their friendship, he had learned to read the subtle signs of Zephyra's moods, the way her mandibles clicked when she was amused, how her spines rattled when she was nervous, the almost imperceptible changes in her bioluminescent markings when she was deep in thought. "The council meeting didn't go well today," he observed. Zephyra's laugh was a complex sound, part mechanical clicking and part musical chime. "That's an understatement. Commander Vex actually suggested that I might be under some form of human mind control. 3 other advisors seriously proposed that you be executed as a security threat. I'm sorry. I never intended to cause problems within your government." "Marcus," Zephyra said, turning to face him with all 4 eyes focused intently on his face. "In the 6 months since our first meeting, I have ended 2 border conflicts through negotiation instead of conquest. I have established trade agreements with species that previously considered us enemies. I have reduced military spending by 30% and redirected those resources toward education and infrastructure. My empire is stronger and more prosperous than it has ever been." "Then, why are your advisors upset?" "Because they don't understand the source of this strength. They see me showing what they interpret as weakness, compassion, uncertainty, the willingness to consider other perspectives, and they assume our enemies will take advantage. They cannot comprehend that true strength sometimes requires vulnerability." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "On Earth, we have a saying, the oak tree that bends in the storm survives while the rigid tree breaks. Perhaps your advisors need to learn the difference between flexibility and weakness. Perhaps they do. But that is not why I asked you here today." Zephyra moved to another part of the garden, where a sculpture made of living crystal grew from the ground like a frozen tree. The sculpture was ancient, its surface covered with carved symbols that predated the current Zarathi civilization. "This is the Memorial of Queens," she explained. "Every ruler of our people for the past 3,000 years is remembered here. Their names, their accomplishments, their contributions to our civilization." Marcus studied the intricate carvings, noting how each section seemed to tell a story of conquest, expansion, and domination. "It's impressive. But I noticed something missing." "And what is that?" "There's no mention of happiness. No record of joy or love or any of the things that make life worth living. It's all about power and territory and victory in battle." Zephyra's mandibles clicked in what he had learned was her equivalent of a bitter smile. "The Zarathi have always believed that such emotions are luxuries that rulers cannot afford. We are taught from birth that to show happiness is to appear weak, that love is a vulnerability our enemies can exploit." "Do you still believe that?" For a moment, Zephyra was silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than Marcus had ever heard it. 6 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But you have taught me something that none of my advisors or generals or conquered subjects ever could." "What's that?" "You have taught me that being seen as beautiful is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength of all." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest, a profound sense of connection to this magnificent alien queen who had allowed him to see her true nature. "And you have taught me something equally valuable." "What?" That beauty exists in forms I never could have imagined. That intelligence and strength and dignity can create their own kind of magnificence, regardless of what species they belong to. Zephyra moved closer to the memorial, her claws tracing one particular section of the crystal surface. I have made a decision, Marcus. One that will change everything. Tell me. I am going to step down as queen. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Of all the things he might have expected her to say, this was the most shocking. Zephyra, you can't be serious. Your people need you. The Empire needs you. The Empire needs a ruler who can guide it into a new era, she corrected. Someone who can build bridges instead of walls, who can inspire loyalty through respect rather than fear. Someone who can be strong without being monstrous. But, that's exactly what you've become. You've already started that transformation. Why abandon it now? Zephyra's multiple eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that was both alien and deeply familiar. Because I want to be free to choose who I am, rather than being trapped by who I was. Because I want to explore what it means to be beautiful instead of terrifying. Because I want to discover what lies beyond the boundaries of power and conquest. Marcus stood up from the bench, moving closer to the towering alien queen who had become his closest friend in the galaxy. And, what about us? What about the friendship we've built, the changes you've started, the alliance between our peoples? The alliance will continue. Commander Vex is a capable leader who shares my vision for a more peaceful empire. As for our friendship. Zephyra paused, and Marcus could see uncertainty in her alien features. That depends on whether you would want to maintain a relationship with someone who was no longer a queen. The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Marcus realized that this was the moment that would define not only their personal relationship but also the future of both their species. Everything they had built together, all the bridges of understanding they had constructed, came down to this single choice. He smiled, the same warm, genuine expression that had started their entire journey together. Zephyra, he said, I never cared that you were a queen. I cared that you were you. Beautiful, intelligent, complex, magnificent you. That hasn't changed, and it never will. For the first time since he had known her, Marcus saw tears in the alien queen's eyes. They were not human tears, but droplets of silvery fluid that glowed with the same bioluminescence as her markings. She reached out with one of her 4 hands, gently touching his shoulder with a claw that could have torn him in half but instead caressed him with infinite gentleness. Thank you, she whispered. For seeing me when no one else could. For calling me beautiful when everyone else saw only a monster. For showing me that change is possible, no matter how old or set in their ways someone might be. Thank you, Marcus replied, for teaching me that beauty comes in forms I never could have imagined. For showing me that friendship can transcend any barrier, any difference, any preconception about what is and isn't possible. As the twin moons rose above the palace gardens, casting their silver light across the alien landscape, 2 beings from different worlds stood together beside a pool of glowing lilies. One was a former queen learning to embrace her own beauty. The other was a human diplomat who had changed the course of galactic history with nothing more than honesty and compassion. The transformation was complete, but it was also just the beginning. In the days and years to come, their friendship would continue to challenge assumptions about what was possible between different species. Their example would inspire other leaders to look beyond the surface of those they considered enemies. Their story would be told throughout the galaxy as proof that understanding and acceptance could overcome any barrier. But all of that was in the future. For now, there was only this moment, 2 friends sharing the quiet beauty of an alien garden, comfortable in each other's presence, and happy to simply exist in a universe that had proven to be far more wonderful than either of them had ever dared to imagine. So, Marcus said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. What happens now? Zephyra's mandibles clicked in amusement. Now we explore what it means to be free. Free from expectations, free from the weight of empire, free to discover who we might become when we're not defined by our past. That sounds beautiful. Yes, Zephyra agreed, looking up at the stars that shone like diamonds against the velvet darkness of space. It really does. And, in that moment, standing together beneath an alien sky, they both understood that the greatest transformation of all was yet to come. The monster had learned to see herself as beautiful. The human had learned to find wonder in the most unexpected places. Together, they would write a new chapter in the history of the galaxy, one that began with a simple truth, that every being, no matter how fearsome or alien, carried within them the capacity for beauty, for growth, for change. The queen was no longer a queen, but she was still magnificent. And, sometimes, that was the most beautiful transformation of all.